Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are going to need another miracle if they even want to compete with number one Ohio State on Saturday.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-YOXSIMER. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network out there. Thanks for tuning in every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. What we're talking about is the UCLA men's basketball defense that needs to shore up on the paint defense when they play Arizona Friday. We'll also dive in a little more to the UCLA Rose Bowl drama. Well, we'll start with UCLA and their upcoming matchup against Ohio State. It's another primetime battle, this time against the number one team in the country in Ohio State, where the Bruins have to find a way to be competitive. You're coming off of a 50-point beatdown versus number two. You had a bye, and then Nebraska came in with a freshman backup quarterback, first career start, and just torched the Bruins. That alongside Nebraska running back Emmett Johnson, and the Bruins couldn't do much. So it's going to take a Nico Iamaleava miracle part two, similar to what it seemed like the Bruins needed when they beat Penn State in early October. They're going to need one here in mid-November. And if UCLA wants any outside chance of a bowl season, they need to win this game. I think it's highly unlikely the Bruins, humongous underdogs again, this time on the road in Columbus. And oh, by the way, what happened last time in Columbus? Well, everybody's going to point out that it was Nico's last game in a Tennessee uniform. First round of the playoff, before everybody knew that Ohio State was destined to become the super team, the national champion on a 4-game run in last year's CFP. It was them cracking Nico's helmet, knocking him to the turf. Ryan Day has had a lot of nice things to say about Nico. They don't want to awaken another superhuman effort, but nobody can take away from his toughness, his ability to run the football, and that's what UCLA is going to need from Nico. The Bruins have to score first against the Buckeyes in this upcoming game. And I know it's a long shot. It's even crazy to think UCLA might be within 3 scores in this game if the defense shows up the same way it did versus Nebraska. Non-existent. If UCLA's offense showed up the same way it did against number 2 Indiana, non-existent. The last 2 performances the Bruins have showed on the field have been dismal with one side of the football or the other, and even special teams hasn't been the best, whether it was the return game, even missing a field goal against Nebraska the other game. Everything has showcased the Bruins have to get better in every area, and are probably going to need a wholesale change at the coaching position. Now, there's going to be a lot of talk about Jedd Fisch to Washington, from Washington to UCLA, but that's not the point. Tim Skipper still got his team focused with an outside chance to get this team to a bowl. And somehow, if UCLA pulls this off, it'd be something. But when it comes to Nico, what UCLA is going to need is a performance where he can actually beat the Buckeyes vertically. Is that possible? I'm not entirely sure. But UCLA has yet to see a Nico performance where he can be that vertical threat down the field, using that live arm he has to burn safeties deep, to burn the DBs with a Rico Flores, with a Titus Mokiao-Atimalala. That's what he needs this year, Quasi Gilmer, the likes. And yet, it's always been on Nico's legs, the leading rusher, Nico spinning out of tackles, making plays out of nowhere, and that's what the Bruins are going to need. But at some point, UCLA is going to have to work its way away from the Noel Mazzoni offense, which is what Jerry Neuheisel has somewhat turned it into, right? Far cry from Tino Sunseri. They've simplified things, and that's led UCLA to look like a decent offense at times, where they're successful, have some trick plays where they always do a direct snap to the running back, and then just ride on Nico extending plays, namely for first downs rushing the football. But Nico's magic, his miracle working ability, has to be with throwing the football in this game. He can run it all he wants, and he can rack up a lot of yards. We've seen UCLA work that wonders to beating Penn State, to staying in other games like that Nebraska game. But they need him to be able to throw the football. And if they can hit anybody, whether it's the tight end swinging out wide to the running backs or going up the seam and finding a wide receiver, Nico has to be solid in this game. And it's not that he wasn't solid against Nebraska. It was a couple of many misses, right? A fourth down here, a missed field goal there, another missed fourth down. And the Bruins just couldn't have those misses against the Nebraska team, whose true freshman quarterback just lit up the UCLA defense. And no. This is not going to be on Nico's shoulders, but it has to be the same recipe like it was against Penn State. The problem is the Bruins showcased all their magic. They've put out a first down fake punt play multiple times. They've put out an onside kick. They've done just about everything they can show. So by the time they're facing number 1 Ohio State, what else can Tim Skipper go to? Well, it's going to take some Nico magic for the Bruins to do it. Can they even get within 3 scores? Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful. And yes, he can run the ball, but the only way the Bruins are going to shock the Buckeyes is, one, can the lines physically maintain any sort of protection for Nico beyond just the rushing lanes, beyond just him running the football or the Bruins handing it off to the running backs? He has to be able to hit somebody deep in this game. If that doesn't happen, the Bruins are a far cry from competing in this game and showcasing that, hey, they have what it takes to compete with the best of the Big Ten. And that's what UCLA is trying to prove to the rest of their administration, the athletic department, what they need to bridge the gap between the second to third tier to moving into that slow building upper tier. Now, there's teams who have been up there. There's been Indiana, who's has been fast risers in that, yet UCLA has to somehow get quickly amongst the Big Ten's elite, or else they're going to get left behind really quick. You can't fail another coaching hire. You can't fail to miss on the coordinators or upgrading at the offensive line while even debating if Nico is staying. But this is another measuring stick. UCLA was not up to the task to stay anywhere close to Indiana, to Nebraska at times, to Utah, teams who can just play some smash mouth football and hope for something. And while Ohio State's trotting out freshman quarterback Julian Sain has done anything but in leading the Buckeyes to a dominating, undefeated start so far. Speaking about start, it's starting to get ugly with UCLA and the Rose Bowl. It's a temporary restraining order filed by the Rose Bowl. What does that even mean? What does it look like? Is this just embarrassing? And how's the future looking like? Well, we'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting those tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. The endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. And there's no surprise fees, no ways that those tickets and those prices jump at checkout. It's the best place, the best way to score those last-minute prices and last-minute tickets at the best prices. What you see, it's what you pay. I've used Game Time to go to many big-time games, whether it be MLB postseason games, some college football games, even some hockey games. I've used it for a variety of events, and Game Time has always delivered for me. So take that guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the code is LOCKED. ONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, cruising on here in Locked On UCLA, we are talking about what is the ongoing drama in what has been an absolute wacky season. Somehow one thing tops the next. You had Nico choosing UCLA with him leaving Tennessee, and then the buildup with that. And then seeing how UCLA came out and looked horrible. And the Bruins shockingly got rid of their head coach in Deshaun Foster. Following the Deshaun Foster firing, UCLA got rid of Tino Sunseri, and then Akaika Malloy left. Bruins come out, and oh, by the way, they went 3 in a row, upsetting top 10 at Penn State. Had a chance to play their way into a Big Ten championship game to shock the world. Well, 3 weeks later and 2 bad defeats after all the hype It's come back down to earth. And the biggest drama is UCLA no longer even pondering leaving the Rose Bowl. It's not just the Rose Bowl, the city of Pasadena suing UCLA. It's the fact that they're actually going to make this happen potentially, allegedly, in 2026. But now Pasadena has been working with the Rose Bowl operating company, and they have filed a temporary restraining order against UCLA. This happened on November 10th, and this is to make sure UCLA can't just immediately cut ties with this contract that lasts through the 2044 season. UCLA reportedly was trying to get rid of this and their contract close to 20 years early, pay them many millions of dollars to end this contract, which is like, well, why are we doing this right now when you're trying to go spend multiple millions to bring in a head coach and get the right facilities? It didn't mean change your home stadium with a new guy and get them to bring in SoFi. That's not the challenge you want next year with the new coach. It just seems kind of dumb. It just seems kind of dumb where the priorities are. But back to what's going on. You have the idea that in the quotes based on the complaints and what is asserted by Pasadena, it's immediate and irreparable harm to the city of Pasadena. And while the Rose Bowl would have, $184 million in bond debt, where Pasadena thinks that UCLA is going to completely impact these finances by leaving. Cool. Here's the thing. They're trying to go back and forth. I'm reading a KFI article where it quotes Sportico. And what Pasadena is going to try and deal with in this legislation, go with historical cases. There's the city of New York versus the New York Jets. Those are the historical cases that will be brought up in this little restraining order battle that might even prevent UCLA from going to SoFi Stadium in 2026. And this is what Pasadena has stated in their filing. There is no substitute for a UCLA period. What's funny is I think UCLA should be thanking Pasadena. They should be thanking the Rose Bowl for all these years of a wonderful back and forth partnership. For over 40 years since the Bruins moved to the Rose Bowl in the early 80s, after having no home stadium, playing in the Coliseum, moving to the Rose Bowl, which has been my whole life, many UCLA generations' whole lives. Some have seen them go play home games and road games in the Coliseum. That's way before my time. But for a lot of these Bruins in this current generation, the Rose Bowl is home, and it's been a separate home. Now, for UCLA, technically what everything's been said from UCLA is that there's been no final decision. The problem is in this plaintiff is that the plaintiffs are arguing that UCLA has already truly confirmed their imminent departure, which is ruining the operations for the stadium, simply because they're already planning multi-million-dollar renovations. They have the standing only seats in the student section area right behind the visiting bench. That was put in there for UCLA. They're trying to upgrade multiple millions of dollars in renovations to keep this place up to date with the latest college football, with keeping the old school vibes and keeping the magic of the tailgating scene on the Saturdays, keeping things up to date in the college football landscape, while it's not just forgotten about for an entire season's worth of games. So if UCLA, with this restraining order scheduled hearing, is, I believe, November 12th, UCLA cannot finalize any agreement with SoFi. However, if this restraining order is denied, that means UCLA would relocate all their home games as soon as next year in 2026. It's been anything but finalized. That's what would happen. And that last game against Washington could very well be the last time we see the Bruins in the Rose Bowl. And I hope we pack it out. I hope we could have a reverse boycott and just showcase to UCLA that, hey, we can pack it out. We care about this place being the home of the Bruins. And until you can find a way to tell all those annoying neighbors, all those annoying people in the local Westwood area that surround the campus that don't want an on-campus stadium, keep it in Pasadena. Keep it in the Rose Bowl. And to all of you who are sitting there listening, watching, maybe reading, saying the Rose Bowl ain't it, well, SoFi is definitely not it. Definitely not it. Nowhere close. Nowhere close. Oh, let's cut the commute time in half for our rich donors. No, that's not what's going to do it for a student that still has to travel to a game. Where are they going to go? They're going to go tailgate in Inglewood? with no grass, with no place to party? You're telling me all the other fans and the youngsters who want to come around and enjoy the traditions of college football? One of the things that I think makes the Coliseum an absolute dump, a dump, I must say, is the god-awful tailgating scene. Like, I remember going like, this sucks. This sucks. And it's always going to suck in the Coliseum, Mausoleum, whatever you want to call it. Make fun of it. Iconic. Who cares? Terrible dumpster fire of a stadium. All right. And yes, the Rose Bowl has its greatness and its, older qualities to it. But the beautiful part of it, a golf course where you can tailgate. It can be hot as the dickens when it's really on fire in late August or September or sometimes even November or October. But leaving this place is ridiculous. And we are almost coming up on a little less than 2 weeks from UCLA playing Washington, where one, it could very well be their last home game. Two, during that last home game, UCLA is probably in negotiations with SoFi to move those games and talking to Jedd Fisch or his agent on the side to be like, hey, are we going to make this happen? Get him to UCLA? Because different odds makers are throwing things out there like, hey, the betting favorite might be Jedd Fisch to come to UCLA. But then it's like, hey, why not interview a coach and be like, hey, do you think UCLA at the Rose Bowl could work? Why not get the opinion of your next head coach who's going to be like, nah, that place is done, right? Like, why not go ask Tony White or former Bruin or Jedd Fisch, who literally coached with UCLA at the Rose Bowl? Like, go ask these guys who you're potentially going to go interview, all right? Whether James Franklin's on the list, it doesn't matter who's on the list. Get the opinion of your next head coach who's going to have to not only learn this UCLA system, just reprogram the traditions or lack thereof, and then figure out where to go for a new stadium. Like, what's the parking situation? UCLA knows what it's like to travel to the Rose Bowl. Like, they got it down pat. Everybody can tell you what it's going to take. But if you're working on, hey, let's change everything before a new coach, that just sounds really dumb to me. It really does. And if you want to continue to look at this new agreement, you've got 20 years maybe. Or how about you work with it down the line? But this UCLA Rose Bowl relationship is ending. It's going to end ugly in a dumpster fire really, really soon. And I'm going to hate to say it or hate to see it end, but I'm certainly going to be there. Find a way to be in there and relish in the memories and the glory of UCLA football in the Rose Bowl. Anything short of that is going to suck in years to come. Unless it's the most beautiful on-campus stadium, there's no way anybody commenting, listening, tweeting, posting, reporting can ever convince me that SoFi is going to be better than the Rose Bowl. There's no way. No way. That cuts my commute in half. Technically easier to get to in some strange imagination. Horrible. It just cuts everything that's fun. While what? You want to go sit in like a little burning, stadium that will not stop a rain delay, that will get you hotter or just as hot if you're sitting in the Rose Bowl. Like, there's nothing super comfortable about it while just being loud, obnoxious, and annoying with a couple of other blue and gold teams. If anything, we should be mad that SoFi exists, because that's kind of also been the reason that UCLA football has been killed with attendance, love, because of the return of the NFL to Los Angeles. It's quite honest. It's quite honestly what's happened. Killed college football a little bit in Los Angeles with all those people who want to go to the NFL. I don't care about them. I really don't. I don't give a damn about the Rams and the Chargers or that stadium. Cool. It's nice to see you fly over. After that, all right, cool. The novelty ends there. The Rose Bowl, always love it. And I can't wait for the days when it's packed again. And I hope that's for years to come. It's just not looking like this, where UCLA, as soon as Wednesday, on November 12th, can figure out a way to get out of this contract in what might be one of their dumber decisions they've ever put out there. Dumber. So Martin Jarmond, to the athletic department, to the people looking at the numbers, some things go bigger than the finances. This is one of them. And unfortunately, UCLA Washington right now might be the last ever game in the Rose Bowl for UCLA as a true home for the Bruins. It's frustrating. Absolutely frustrating. Next, I'll be talking about UCLA and men's basketball team taking on Arizona. What's one key factor that UCLA has to shore up? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. So, for example, you're looking at this UCLA-Ohio State matchup coming up this week. Ohio State, at the moment on FanDuel, at this very moment, is a 33.5-point favorite over UCLA. So, if you think the Bruins are going to cover, go hammer that UCLA plus 33.5, or go lean with Ohio State and say, all right, go check this out, 33.5 points, and lay with the Buckeyes, number one team in the country, because FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet, and it wins. Head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Cruising on here with Locked On UCLA. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer talk with you guys. We're talking UCLA versus Arizona, a small little build-up to a huge matchup later in the week. Arizona does have Northern Arizona on the day of dropping this pod before they play the Bruins, so they have one more game, a day off, another day off, and then they're playing UCLA at the Intuit Dome, while the Bruins have a few days to get healthy, to get Donovan Dent back in the starting lineup, because UCLA will not win this game without Donovan Dent playing and starting to his full capabilities, while they need to significantly improve defensively. This is what UCLA has done against the last couple opponents. Against Eastern Washington, game one, the Bruins allowed 38 points in the paint, 74 points from Eastern Washington in what was somewhat of a dismal performance, a game where UCLA led for 33.5 minutes, mostly start to finish, never truly in doubt, but they allowed Eastern Washington to take it to them in the paint and shoot about 54% overall. MICK CRONIN said after the game he'd fire himself. Bruins responded with a performance against Pepperdine where UCLA turned it over 10 times. Turned it over 10 times. Like, okay, all right, are those decent numbers? Well, Pepperdine got to the line 13 times. Didn't shoot that well, but UCLA was okay in a game where they just couldn't put Pepperdine away. UCLA got up by almost 20 with 6.5 left, and they let Pepperdine sneak in there. And in this game, Pepperdine led for a small portion in the middle part of the first half. Again, UCLA leading by 35 points, where they led by 9 at the half versus Pepperdine, and only outscored the Waves by 2 after a late Pepperdine run can keep this game somewhat close in that second half. You're like, okay, I guess Pepperdine, UCLA allowed 22 points in the paint. So that number dipped a little bit, less than the 38 UCLA allowed in game one, to the West Georgia game where things flipped completely. UCLA, their most points scored, their biggest margin of victory, but they also allowed West Georgia, the Wolves out of the ASUN, to shoot 52% from three. All right. So they've been sliced and diced in different ways. Some teams making free throws, some teams hitting a bunch of three-point shots, or Eastern Washington attacking the paint. Arizona's bread and butter through 2 games against Florida and Utah Tech, both games where they've put up 93 points in the game. 93 points. So their first 2 games, they will have played a third by the time they play UCLA. Arizona in the first 2 games is averaging 54 points in the paint. All right. So game one, it was Koa Pete who had 30 points, 7 rebounds, and made most of his free throws. Then you're going to have Krivas, who can go in there, 6 points, 8 rebounds, be the big monster in the paint that UCLA missed last year. But it was Vesar who came in and was dominant for the Wildcats. Krivas is back this year. Then you have Jaden Bradley to contend with, who was 27 points in his first game against Florida, 9 of 10 from the free throw line. So they have a varying assortment of guys who they can go to and dominate. Now in their next game against Utah Tech, the guy who dominated, you had Owaka, who had 18 rebounds, 12 points. Braden Burries broke out with 18 points, hit a couple of threes. And Koa Pete, 18 points in this game. So Koa Pete, through his young career, is averaging 24 points per game, if I've got that math correct, including a dominant performance against one of the best teams in the country, and Arizona has led for a majority of this season. Now, Utah Tech was keeping somewhat up in pace with Arizona, only down by 7 in the second half, but it was Arizona who stretched that lead in the second half to a big, 26-point win over Utah Tech. So we'll see. UCLA is going to have their chances to score. They will. But Arizona is going to take it to you in the paint. And the Bruins, while that number has gotten better against West Georgia, UCLA allowed 8 points in the paint against West Georgia. Only 8 points in the paint. And they had their most points off turnovers from a game this year. UCLA, 23 points off turnovers versus West Georgia in a game where the Wolves were only down by 5 at the break, kept it close before the Bruins turned on the engines and pulled away in a game they led the entirety. 38-39 minutes when they pulled away. But Arizona is coming. They're going to attack the paint. This is where Booker has to step up. This is where Jamison just can't get into immediate foul trouble. And if things are really going bad in the post, we might even see a small entry into the game from Peoples Jr. We just might. If Jamison's in trouble, if Booker's really struggling, maybe Bilodeau gets in foul trouble, we could see a Peoples Jr. appearance. All right? Because I'm not sure UCLA wants to go anywhere close to their small lineup. And if Jamison continues his fouling woes, if Booker gets into some trouble or is struggling in the paint, Cronin might have to go to Peoples Jr. And I'm not sure that's the best option off the bench, but that's the only other guy UCLA has with the size that could keep pace with Arizona's bigs or an attacking Koa Pete. That's where we need Booker to block some shots. UCLA to score over 90 in this game. They're going to have to score close to 90 in this game to beat Arizona. I don't think this will be a MICK Cronin-like workman defensive performance where they'll keep Arizona to under 60 and beat them. This is not one of those teams that's ready to do that yet. It's a team that UCLA needs to score. Donovan Dent has to be healthy, and it seems like he's anything but. And if Arizona scores more than 40 points in the paint, I think they win this game by 10 to 15. And I'll talk more about this with some potential special guests and coming up throughout the week. But this could be one of those little dicey matchups coming up for the Bruins when they take on number 5 Arizona in game number 4. All right? But until then, like, comment, subscribe. We'll talk about UCLA's future with the Rose Bowl when it breaks and everything else here in this podcast. So like, comment, subscribe. Down low, we'll talk more football, more matchups, UCLA, Ohio State, UCLA women's basketball, and stay up to date with all that here. And hands up, Bruins fans. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.